That's $64,100 a year, tax-free. Is she living in poverty?
Doesn't sound like it.
No, but your Census Bureau counts her as being poor.
11% or just 1? Could everything we know regarding financial hardship in America be a monumental data mirage? During an intense congressional debate, Senator John Kennedy confronted Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick to deconstruct a highly influential metric in federal legislation. The lawmaker revealed a startling truth. The federal destitution threshold exclusively tracks liquid earnings, completely ignoring substantial assistance initiatives such as nutritional aid, public health care, rental assistance, and federal rebates. Factor those resources back in, the senator asserted, and the true destitution rate crashes to barely 1%. The secretary did more than pay attention, he concurred, suggesting a massive transformation regarding how federal agencies calculate prosperity. Yet before you accept this numerical sleight of hand, you must understand the significant detail the lawmaker intentionally omitted from his underlying calculation. View the highly compelling analysis below. If you desire additional unfiltered reporting, hit the membership button to back our independent journalism.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here. Mr. Secretary, the Census Bureau is under your jurisdiction, is it not?
Yes, it is.
And the Census Bureau is in charge of defining what it means to be poor or in poverty in America. Is that correct?
I think it does economic analysis for America.
But it also defines poverty level, does it not?
I don't know if it's the defining.
Well, you need
Bureau.
to look, because it does.
Okay.
If you know, this isn't a quiz, if you know, what's the percentage of Americans who live at or below the poverty level?
I don't know the percentage.
Okay, it's around 11%. It's been constant. Now, when the Census Bureau defines poverty, they do it by income. You're aware of that. When the Census Bureau defines poverty using income, they only count income that the individual earns or cash income that the individual gets from the federal government. Is that correct?
Well, it includes all sources of their income. I mean, that is the purpose.
Yeah, their income and cash income from the federal government. Is that correct?
Oh, meaning does it include income that they receive from the federal government?
Yeah, cash.
I think so.
Yeah. So if a person makes $11,000 a year, that's considered toward poverty level. But if the person gets a cash payment, let's say in the form of SSI or TANF, that counts too. Is that right?
I'm not certain.
Yeah, it does. Okay. Are you aware that your agency doesn't count non-cash payments from the federal government defining poverty?
I am not.
Are you aware that your agency doesn't count refundable earned income tax credits, or food stamps, or housing subsidies, or utility bill subsidies, or Medicaid, or free school meals? They don't count that. They call it a non-cash payment, and it doesn't count. You aware of that?
It sounds to me that you and I are going to spend some time together and we're going to change it, but I did not know that, and it sounds like something that we should add.
And the purpose of my questioning is not to punish people who need help. The American people are the most generous people in the world. That's why we spend $1.4 trillion a year helping people that other countries would allow to die in a ditch. But your Census Bureau says it's 11% who live at or below the poverty level. That's a lie. It's 1%. If you count as any person with a brain above a single cell organism would, cash and non-cash payments, They're not. They're above the poverty level, and we ought to be honest with the American people and thank them for getting the poverty level down to 1%, instead of giving them a curb stomping and calling them selfish. Let me give you a real life example here. Let's suppose you've got a mom and 2 kids. According to your Census Bureau, the poverty level for her is $27,000. She makes $11,000 a year, let's say. So she's below the poverty level. But she also qualifies for $3,400 in refundable tax credits based on her $11,000 salary, $9,200 in food stamps, that's for her and her 2 children, $9,500 in housing subsidies, $900 in utility bill subsidies, $16,000 in Medicaid, $3,100 a year in free school lunches, and $6,600 a year in TANF. That's $64,100 a year, tax-free. Is she living in poverty?
Doesn't sound like it.
No, but your Census Bureau counts her as being poor. I'm not saying take away her benefits. I'm saying give the American people a little credit. And I really think you need to change the definition to a definition that looks like somebody designed the damn thing on purpose. Final question, I'm going to hurry, Mr. Chairman. Why don't you just use satellite internet service? Why don't you just use Global Star or Starlink? You said the cost is $4,000 per person in Louisiana. For $600 you can buy a Starlink terminal. Why don't you just do that? And do it across America and save a bunch of money.
The states were responsible for determining the best outcome, and sometimes fiber in a dense location can be economically better. Sometimes satellite does not work best on geography.
It can't be cheaper. That's impossible. It can't be cheaper.
Math is, each of the states did their best. We worked it out with them, and we moved on.
I just don't understand. You can buy, I'm not saying do Musk. There are others that just throw it out for bid. But $600 for a terminal versus $4,000 for fiber optic? This is taxpayer money. I'm done. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Madam Chairman. I should have known it's you, Shelley. You're much nicer than Jerry. He would have cut me off.
Yeah, Senator Shaheen.
Little credit. And I really think you need to change the definition to a definition that looks like somebody designed the damn thing on purpose. Final question, I'm going to hurry, Mr. Chairman. Why don't you just use satellite internet service? Why don't you just use Global Star or Starlink? You said the cost is $4,000 per person in Louisiana. For $600 you can buy a Starlink terminal. Why don't you just do that? And do it across America and save a bunch of money.
The states were responsible for determining the best outcome, and sometimes fiber in a dense location can be economically better. Sometimes satellite does not work best on geography.
It can't be cheaper. That's impossible. It can't be cheaper.
Math is, each of the states did their best. We worked it out with them, and we moved on.
I just don't understand. You can buy, I'm not saying do Musk. There are others that just throw it out for bid. But $600 for a terminal versus $4,000 for fiber optic? This is taxpayer money. I'm done. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Madam Chairman. I should have known it's you, Shelley. You're much nicer than Jerry. He would have cut me off.
Yeah, Senator Shaheen.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here. In your opening statement, you said the states chose to do it, meaning the BEAD program, the best way for their states. In 2023, NTIA allocated $196.5 million in BEAD funding to the state of New Hampshire based on a 5-year plan that were approved and submitted in 2024. And the state planned to develop broadband infrastructure by prioritizing fiber optic cables and hybrid fiber coaxial technologies. And I appreciate Senator Kennedy's question about satellite transmission, because in some places it does make sense, and as you pointed that out in your opening statement. But the reality is there are a lot of places where it doesn't make sense, because in states like New Hampshire, satellites are unreliable in severe weather. They have a shorter lifespan, and they require more maintenance than fiber optic cables. So as you pointed out, also, in a lot of places, it's actually better long-term to use those fiber optic cables. And one of the reasons that New Hampshire submitted a new plan was because on June 6th, your office said they had to come up with a low-cost, technology-neutral approach that's required by the new guidelines. But that approach was not what the state had determined was the best way to connect. And now we see that SpaceX in June 2026, who was in negotiations with New Hampshire, has sent a letter to states with a set of demands that would ensure Starlink receives federal grant money even when residents don't purchase Starlink broadband service. The demands would also guarantee that SpaceX gets paid even if it doesn't reserve large portions of Starlink network capacity for homes in the areas that are supposed to receive BEAD-funded internet service. So my question, Mr. Secretary, is, given that and given concerns that we're seeing in the state of New Hampshire, are states going to be able to renegotiate with ISPs on the requirements of the program if they're dealing with a company like SpaceX that is not agreeing to what has been determined to be the requirements of their grants?
Thank you. New Hampshire, we agreed with New Hampshire in November of 2025. So they were one of the first and one of the fastest to go for the new guidelines, and they did an excellent job. 67% is fiber, because they determined that was the best outcome. 21.5% was satellite, and then, the fixed wireless was about 11%. So they used a technology-neutral approach. They saved a lot of money, and they've done your broadband office did a great job. So I just
there's no doubt about that, but the percentages are not totally accurate, because in a state like New Hampshire, where we have a lot of small communities and rural populations, the percentages don't accurately reflect the households we need to reach if we're going to ensure 100% access to broadband service. And that's the issue that I'm raising with you, because right now we have a plan that has been revised, and as you point out, it has been approved. But the reality is, over 1,000 households, or 1,000 locations, it's about 1,106, I think, depend on accurate, adequate connections to Starlink. And right now, we're engaged in a debate over whether Starlink is actually going to provide that service that we're trying to contract for. So what I want to know is, if we have an ISP that is not willing to abide by the terms of the agreement, can states go out and get a new ISP that's actually going to provide by the terms of the agreement?
It is my understanding that SpaceX, as you correctly say, sent you a rider to modify the terms.
They sent a number of states.
And they sent a number of states. That rider is outside of our guidelines, is outside the statute, and it is rejected by us. There will be no rider. And if SpaceX does not want to live without the rider, then you will definitely go find an alternative means of execution so you can deliver broadband to each and every one of the people in your state as you are entitled to and as we will deliver. So we are on the same side.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We should analyze the legislative drama, the statistical manipulation, and the profound economic realities surrounding the widely shared conversation between Senator John Kennedy and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. This event served as much more than a routine congressional session. The exchange offered a prime example of leveraging statistics to alter public perception regarding domestic financial hardship. At first glance, the underlying story appears highly controversial. The federal agency responsible for demographics, functioning within the Commerce Department Lutnick oversees, asserts that approximately 11% of citizens exist at or beneath the destitution threshold. Yet the lawmaker contested this standard by offering a perspective that could overhaul federal legislation, asserting that the formal government metric depends on an obsolete framework that entirely misrepresents current economic conditions. Comprehending the senator's stance requires a close look at how the formal destitution index is genuinely formulated. Created decades ago, this traditional system evaluates financial distress solely by calculating a family's total liquid earnings, wages, salaries, and direct federal monetary aid. Like retirement benefits, it critically turns a blind eye toward the contemporary non-monetary assistance network. According to the formal destitution metric, nutritional support, public health care, rental aid, utility discounts, complimentary student meals, and refundable tax rebates essentially remain invisible. The lawmaker illustrated this defect by detailing a persuasive and practical real-world example. Consider a single mother currently raising 2 children. According to national standards, her destitution limit sits around $27,000. Bringing in $11,000 from employment, she officially falls under the category of enduring extreme hardship. However, the senator subsequently piled the concealed financial worth of her assistance programs onto her wages. Combining tax rebates, nutritional aid, rental support, utility help, medical coverage, reduced-price educational meals, and standard monetary relief, her total documented assets surged to a staggering $64,000 annually. The lawmaker's theatrical deduction arrived immediately afterward. He questioned how a family acquiring tens of thousands in federal backing could be considered destitute, insisting that all monetary and non-monetary aid must be tallied. Consequently, the genuine national destitution figure plummets from 11% down to a mere 1%. The secretary concurred, proposing a radical overhaul regarding the way federal agencies monitor prosperity. Nevertheless, while the senator's foundation exposes a real restriction in traditional statistics, his sensational finding depends on an incredibly deceptive logical jump. The politician portrayed the demographic agency as if it intentionally conceals these non-monetary figures. Unbiased analysts actually resolved this precise complaint more than 10 years in the past. Starting in the early 2010s, the Federal Demographics Department has released an exhaustive alternative standard known as the Secondary Destitution Index. This supplementary gauge was created expressly to perform the math the senator requested, incorporating nutritional aid, tax reductions, rental support, and utility assistance. Yet here lies the core reality that nearly every trending video omits. Whenever professionals assess financial hardship utilizing this secondary index, the domestic destitution figure absolutely refuses to disappear down to 1%. The metric persistently remains close to 11%, varying marginally based on broader financial climates. The reason the exhaustive hardship statistic avoids plummeting to zero upon tallying all relief is that the secondary index avoids merely adding federal perks. The calculation simultaneously deducts unavoidable everyday survival expenses that the formal standard overlooks. This supplementary gauge removes various levels of taxation, employment costs such as transit and surging daycare, personal medical bills, and the widely varying geographical prices of lodging. A household residing in a pricey urban zone could acquire significant social support. However, if exorbitant leasing fees consume a massive portion of their take-home pay, they stay in severe monetary danger. During the temporary expansion of the youth tax rebate a few years ago, the secondary index correctly recorded juvenile destitution plummeting to an unprecedented bottom. Once those broader benefits ceased, the supplementary gauge noted juvenile hardship rocketing straight up again, demonstrating that the measurement properly captures physical deprivation. Additionally, the lawmaker's 1% statistic leans on a significant bookkeeping mirage concerning medical coverage. Throughout his math, he handles thousands of dollars in public health insurance as though it represents liquid funds sitting inside the parent's financial institution. Yet public medical assistance serves as protective coverage rather than fluid revenue. An embattled guardian remains unable to utilize a healthcare perk to cover property leases, acquire supermarket food, or procure cold weather apparel. Health protection is crucial, yet treating clinical expenses as fluid buying strength drastically misrepresents a household's daily financial viability. The truthful conclusion is that the two metrics expose essential and paired realities. The formal percentage indicates the number of households incapable of funding fundamental existence via paychecks and direct currency alone. The secondary percentage illustrates the position of households once the complete assistance network engages against the brutal burden of genuine survival expenses. Domestic financial hardship represents neither a basic 11% defeat nor an easily dismissed 1% mirage. This issue remains a complicated truth requiring authentic assessment. This argument carries immense weight because the manner in which a culture quantifies destitution controls who receives assistance and whether public initiatives are deemed effective. Should legislators embrace the senator's perspective and pronounce destitution practically eradicated at 1%, the rational subsequent action would involve slashing the exact support systems maintaining those households the instant nutritional aid, medical coverage, and rental assistance are removed. Hardship evaluated by any truthful criteria would aggressively surge since those initiatives served as the sole structure stopping absolute financial ruin for countless individuals. The lawmaker stated he is not pushing to slash these initiatives, and ensuring officials maintain that promise is absolutely vital. The genuine issue avoids focusing on whether a statistic appears favorable on a legislative graph, focusing instead on whether actual individuals represented by the data possess the means to survive. Theoretical calculations displaying tens of thousands in blended aid fail to cover housing costs when the majority consists of unusable clinical assistance. Should you desire intense and thorough analyses exposing the reality beneath legislative news, press that subscription icon to assist our journey toward 100,000 followers, and drop your opinions in the discussion section below.